The room was sweltering, the heat from the afternoon sun lingering long after dusk. The ceiling fan spun lazily above us, doing little to cool the fire building between our bodies. Evan's hands gripped my waist with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, his lips tracing a slow, deliberate path from my collarbone to my jaw. I leaned back against the edge of the desk, letting my dress slip from my shoulders as his fingers trailed down my spine, leaving a trail of electricity in their wake. I tangled my fingers in his hair, pulling him closer, my breath shallow and quick. The smell of his skin, cigarettes and sweat mixed with the faint scent of leather intoxicated me. His lips pressed against mine with an urgency that mirrored the reckless need pulsing through my veins. The desk creaked beneath us as he lifted me onto it, his hands gripping my thighs as if he never wanted to let go. But I knew better. Men like Evan always let go in the end. Evan's body pressed firmly against mine, his strength and intensity a perfect match for my own need. His hands explored me with a mixture of greed and precision, as if he had memorized every place that would draw a gasp or a shiver from me. I leaned back, arcing into his touch, feeling the edge of the desk dig into my back, but not caring. His kisses deepened, each one more urgent, more consuming, as though he wanted to claim me entirely. My nails traced patterns down his arms, and I smiled at the way his breath hitched. He paused for a moment, his forehead resting against mine, his dark eyes searching mine with something that resembled hesitation. "Don't stop now," I whispered, my voice low and teasing, and that was all it took to push him further. His hands slid under the fabric of my dress, lifting it higher as his lips moved to my shoulder, then lower, igniting a trail of fire everywhere he touched. The desk groaned under the weight of us, our bodies moving in rhythm, each moment blurring into the next. When it was over, he lingered, his body still close to mine, his breathing heavy against my skin. I leaned into him for a moment, letting the silence settle between us, then gently pushed him away, adjusting my dress as I slid off the desk. He thought this meant something. They always do, but in the end, Evan was just another pawn, and I was the only one playing to win. Afterward, I lay sprawled across the desk, the room spinning as I stared at the cracks in the ceiling. Evan leaned against the wall, lighting a cigarette, his chest rising and falling with the effort of catching his breath. He smirked at me, that same cocky grin he had worn since the moment he walked into my life. I met his gaze and smiled back, already calculating my next move. Let me tell you something about myself. I'm Tessa Harland, and I always get what I want. Some call me a femme fatale. Others just call me trouble. They're all right. I've lived in this dead-end town for too long, trapped in a marriage to Gerald, a man more interested in his car dealership and his whiskey than in me. But I don't wait around for life to hand me what I deserve. I take it. And when Evan Packer walked into that dealership, all told, dark and indifferent, I knew he was the answer to my boredom. Evan was a drifter, just passing through, or so he claimed. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of ambition, a hunger for something bigger than this nowhere town. I saw it the moment we locked eyes, and I knew I could use it. Men like Evan think they're in control, but they're just pawns in my game. He took a job at the dealership, and within a week, we were sneaking around behind Gerald's back. But it wasn't just about the thrill of the affair. I had bigger plans, and Evan was the perfect accomplice. Gerald's safe was full of cash, the kind of money that could buy freedom, and Evan had the skills to get it. All I had to do was keep him under my spell long enough to make him do exactly what I wanted. It was an easy task. All I needed to do was to constantly remind him of the first time we made love. So I took him to the empty dealership after hours. The cars gleamed under the fluorescent lights, silent witnesses to our recklessness. Evan pulled me onto the hood of a cherry red convertible, his hands gripping my hips as he kissed me with a fervor that made my head spin. I let my nails rake down his back, savoring the way he shivered under my touch. He whispered my name, his voice rough and low, as his lips trailed down my neck. I arced into him, my fingers tangling in his shirt as I pulled him closer. The cold metal of the car beneath us was a stark contrast to the heat building between our bodies, a reminder of just how dangerous this all was. But danger had always been my aphrodisiac. Evan's kisses deepened, growing rougher, more urgent, as his hands slid beneath my blouse, the fabric crumpling between his fingers. I leaned back against the hood, letting the cold steel press into my skin, heightening the sensation of his warm touch. The fluorescent lights cast sharp shadows across his face, illuminating the hunger in his eyes as he looked at me. I smiled, letting the moment linger just long enough to drive him mad. Before pulling him closer, our bodies moving together in perfect sync. His breath was hot against my ear, and his voice cracked as he murmured promises he couldn't possibly keep. I responded with a low laugh, wrapping my legs around him, drawing him further into the game we were both playing. My fingers moved to his belt, unbuckling it with practiced ease, as I whispered something just soft enough to make him tremble. He pressed me harder against the car, the edge of the hood biting into my back, but I didn't care. The pain only sharpened the pleasure, making the moment even more electric. As we moved together, the heat between us drowning out everything else, I knew I had him exactly where I wanted. His groans echoed through the empty showroom, mixing with the distant hum of the light. Then he collapsed against me, his forehead resting against mine, his chest heaving with exertion. I stroked his hair, offering him a smile that was equal parts gratitude and manipulation. In his arms, I let him believe he was the one in control, the one conquering me, but deep inside I knew the truth. Every move he made was part of my plan. Every touch was another step toward freedom. The scent of oil and gasoline mixed with the aftermath of our passion. I traced lazy patterns on his chest, my mind already racing with the next step of my plan. Evan thought he was winning me over, that this was real, but I knew better. This was a game, and I was the one holding all the cards. Evan eventually caught on, of course. Men like him always do, but never soon enough. By the time he realized I was using him, the money was already gone, and Gerald was out of the picture permanently. Evan confronted me one night, his eyes blazing with anger and betrayal. He shouted, cursed, called me every name in the book. But I just stood there, smirking, letting him vent. Did it ever mean anything to you? He demanded, his voice breaking at the edges. Of course it did. I lied, my voice smooth as silk. Just not enough. The next morning he was gone, leaving nothing but a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the counter. I poured myself a drink, savoring the burn as it slid down my throat. The town whispered about the scandal, about Gerald's sudden disappearance, and the drifter who left without a trace. Let them talk. I had my freedom, my money, and no regrets. Because in the end, the only thing I've ever truly loved is winning.